A's Extra.
For the best coverage of Anglers baseball, it's the Hook Podcast.
It's gone into the Cardinals bullpen. Evan Longoria has tied the game at 4.
Swing and a miss, strike 3. Jeff Belge loads the bases and somehow dances his way out of the jam. It is long gone. It's another torque bomb.
Now to your hosts, Ben Schulman and Emmanuel Berbari.
Welcome into episode 6 of The Hook, leading up to the 2021 summer. About a week away from opening day, where Chatham will visit Falmouth. And after a year of not having Chatham A's baseball, getting really close to that first pitch, alongside Ben Schulman, Emmanuel Berbari with you. Ben, a brief hiatus for us, but we are back, and we bring along with it a very special guest today.
Yeah, we have a great guest in Anglers manager Tom Holliday, which should be a ton of fun. Yeah, a bit of a hiatus. I think we can say this might not be the first time we recorded this episode. Unfortunately, after a bit of hiatus, we had it recorded last week, and then my computer broke. So we got to do it again. But we're happy to be back. Apologize for the delay. And we'll still have, that interview is still very current and very impactful. We're going to hear a lot about the team and about other stuff going on in Chatham that only the manager can tell you.
And on a more somber note, remembering Paul Gallup, who unfortunately passed away, a commissioner, a volunteer, a host parent, a treasurer, a president, a public address announcer, held so many hats and had such an impact on not only the Chatham Anglers as an organization, but the Chatham community as a whole, Ben.
For sure. His impact, can't be overstated. You look at the response that went online just about a week and a half ago, and, people from all walks of life in the Cape Cod community remarking about how Paul affected their lives. And then personally for us, he's the guy who took the chance on Dan Duva all those years ago and Guy Benson to create this media team that, is now 16, 17 years into its existence. So he, his passion for the game, his passion for everything he did, helped him help so many other people. And it's just such a major loss for the community, but, a time to reflect on how much of an impact Paul Gallup made on each and every one of us.
And that legacy will continue to carry on and impacted so many people, including our guest today, Chatham manager Tom Holliday. Going to look ahead to the season, look at what's been a whirlwind of a last year leading up to this point for Tom Holliday, constructing a roster, recruiting, and now bringing his players to Chatham and getting ready for opening day at Falmouth. But we start with the remembrance of Paul Gallup.
Well, I think a guy that donates as much of his personal time as Paul did to Cape Cod, he'll go missed, he'll go unmentioned. Just the nature of talking about summer baseball, first thing that comes up is Cape Cod. Are you playing in the Cape or where are you playing? And, Paul's one of those guys that helped develop the image around the country. And I think from the fact that he lived in Chatham, when I went up there, I guess it was 3 summers ago, the first year that I went, I spent a lot of time with him trying to get a feel for what the league was really about, because it's really not as intense as college baseball as I know it. And it's not as intense as pro baseball, but it has a very strong connection to pro baseball and grooming guys. And after talking to him and realizing that, you're not going to get the umpires that you're going to get in the big conferences, so easy on the umps. The fields aren't going to be like what you're used to in the really good stadiums around the country. So, bear with it and try to understand it. This is a throwback and it's more about the kids being tough enough to put in 5 or 6 weeks away from home. And, I kind of got the drift of it, because when I sent players up there, to the Cape over the years. Once they got there, you lose track of what's going on. And so, Paul was instrumental in explaining to me the makeup, the mechanics of it, their own little structure, which they're very proud of. And, made it a lot easier for me to do. And he'll certainly be missed.
Yeah, he's such a monumental figure, both for the league in general and then just the anglers. What do you remember from your first meeting with him, aside from, the explanations he gave you, just as he was as a person? What do you remember from talking to Paul the first time?
Well, he's a guy that is a good listener. We were at a brunch, and I had some questions about, why don't we get bats donated by Major League Baseball? Why don't we utilize Major League Baseball more? Because they want to be more involved, and trying to explain to me the mechanics of getting them involved and how hard it is. And, just letting me know the ins and outs of why the Cape is what it is. And, that they're always open for help and always open for change. But, I had a hard time understanding why, nobody charged anybody anything to come to the games. And he's like, well, you know what? It's entertainment on the Cape. It's for people, that are busy to, after you get done with dinner, come out to a game. The importance of all the donation of time from all the people in the community. And you really don't understand that until you get up there and see it. But it's a modified American Legion setup. The town makes it work. And so, Paul being able to explain it to me, it's like makes you kind of go back in time, and made me, think about, what's so cool about this is it has so much respect, the Cape, and yet it's really a simple operation. And sometimes you don't need to change things to make them better. They're satisfied with the way it is. So, with that being said, it's this will be good. All I got to do is worry about taking care of my team and trying to satisfy those kids and coach them. And then when it's over, it's over. It's like you don't need to worry about questioning the playoff system in order to satisfy television or anything like that. So, Paul was just good at keeping it simple.
You mentioned the respect level of the Cape, the simple operation that's worked for so many years. And last year, of course, robbed of that with everything that happened with the pandemic. We remember catching up with you a little bit out from the season before the word of the cancellation went down, and just how eager you were to have this opportunity for the college players and for the people of Chatham. How eager are you now, knowing you're getting closer and closer to another Cape League season?
Kind of anxious, and I had a little concern about moving the schedule to the 20th, and I had some concern about the Major League Draft being moved to July, because I'm about the players. I always have been, and I think Cape Cod is about the players. It's about their development, and I'm anxious. Like, this weekend is big. You sit around, you watch, and you try to monitor, 64 teams. And as they go down, you say, well, okay, if I got somebody on that team, he could be here by this date. And so I'm getting ready to jump in a vehicle and drive on Tuesday to try to get up there by Thursday. So in the meantime, I've got 40 kids that I plan on talking to, either about arrival times or setting a date for arrivals. Guys that are finishing the season sore, that need a little time off, guys that might be transferring, that might need a little time to pick another school. There's a new set of issues to deal with. So quite frankly, I'm like busier than I ever thought I could be, but it's this week, and it's what it stands for. Now, by tonight or tomorrow, there's only going to be 16 teams left. So now you get a clearer picture of who's coming and when they're coming. And, you got to deal with those kids that are temps that have given you their word they'll be there on time. And, we're scheduled to practice on the 13th. So You know, you got a little front office work to do here over the next 48 hours.
How has your role changed because of what's gone on with, you know, talking to players and scheduling for players to come in? What's different about this year than years previous?
Well, there's so many kids that want to come to the Cape. I mean, it is now like, you know, with all the COVID guys that have been given another year of eligibility, and all the freshmen that didn't play as much because the older guys came back. Okay, so example, you know, a kid that would have been a 6th round draft choice goes to college. And so he gets there and he finds out that there's another guy that would have been a 6th rounder that wouldn't take 20 grand. And he went back to school. So who's better, the 22-year-old 6th rounder or the 18-year-old 6th rounder? So the 22-year-old plays, and the 6th rounder that's a total stud coming out of high school, you know, he gets 15, 20, 25 at bats. So he's a true freshman. And those are the guys that everybody in the Cape recruited in September. And so I think getting a bunch of puppies, and I think I've got a really good nucleus of young studs. But again, the Cape is tough, and there's going to be a lot of high quality pitchers up there. So trying to get a couple older bats to have so that you don't get beat up too much. And again, the number of arms you got, and trying to understand that these kids, a lot of them don't know where they're going to get drafted. And they're kids that you've had ties with, kids that I had on my Cape roster last year that, quite frankly, I feel like I owe them. And, you know, I owe them at least a couple of weeks in the Cape so they can maybe do that last thing before the draft. So honestly, this draft thing being moved has created issues, not necessarily bad, but just issues. And the roster moves, from what I've done in the past, I mean, they're going to be delicate, probably going to agitate some people, you know, but you can't be everything for everybody.
Absolutely. No way to make everyone happy. You mentioned that inexperience that could come with, you know, COVID kind of overloading college rosters with guys coming back. What are the challenges, but also the opportunities that come from having, you know, a fresher, younger, less experienced roster this season than in 18 or 19?
Well, I'll tell you, and it's just a gut feeling, okay? Because you really don't know until you look them in the face, because, you know, they can say anything they want in a text message, and they can really say anything they want on a phone call. But the true point of it is they condensed the schedule. So it's really only going to be maybe 6 solid weeks, you know, and nobody knows about the playoffs. So it's shorter. It's a shorter season. It's 6 games a week. We actually have a designated day off, which, as it turns out up there, it's always needed. But the kids that do feel like they're missing something, or they didn't get it done in their freshman year, I think there's going to be some kids that are going to play because they're agitated, and maybe even irritated with their schools because they didn't play as much as they thought they were going to. So you might get a more involved player this summer. And at the same time, I think some of the older guys that have been getting ready for this season since January, you got to really watch out for burnout. And, you know, I'm gonna give some of the kids that have played every day. Okay, here's an example. Okay, I got a guy from Oklahoma State that's played, you know, regularly in center field, 175 at bats. I'm going to tell him to take his time. I'm going to give him an exaggerated reporting date, because this kid needs some time off. This is a legit freshman, a little guy with really good talent. But quite frankly, if they don't make it to the super regionals, he's going to need to take his time, come back, get his stuff, do his exit interview with the coach, go home, see mom and dad for a couple of days, and then start the journey up to the Cape. So they're not going to be like get off the airplane in Stillwater, meet with the coach, get in your car and drive to Cape. I don't want that. And in the past, I've wanted that. Like when the season's over, I got to have you up here. We're getting started. I don't want to be 1-9. I want to be able to compete a little bit. And I think with all the kids wanting to come to Cape Cod this year, that it'll be an easier transition and body movement. Probably a bigger pain in the rear end for the housing lady. But again, like I said, you can't be everything to everybody. And I mean, let's face it, once it gets started in the Cape, it has really gotten competitive. And a lot of people think it's player development. It is player development, but I got news for you. There's 9 other guys in that league right now that when they put their uniform on, they're not wasting their time. They're getting after it too. So it's going to be competitive, and your roster moves are going to be critical. And quite frankly, I'm ready for it. I've been geared up for tonight and tomorrow, and I'm geared up to make the drive.
You mentioned earlier how it may not be as vamped up as high stakes college baseball, but at the same time, the Cape League has gotten so much more competitive over the years to the point where, like you just mentioned, people are ready to go at it night after night. When you talk about recruiting players, a process that starts back in the fall and kind of continues throughout the year, how competitive is that? And if you could just provide the listener a little bit of insight into how that process goes for someone like you.
Say that again. I want to hear what you said again.
For sure. Just the recruiting process with how competitive the league has gotten starting back in the fall. I was wondering from your perspective, how competitive that potentially gets.
Well, I'll tell you something. Last summer I did a team in the Texas Collegiate League out of Tulsa, and I invited my entire Cape team because they, when they canceled the Cape, quite frankly, I needed to put a baseball uniform on and get after it. So when I did the thing at Tulsa, I ended up with about half my team and picked up some other guys around the country that, they weren't COVID intimidated. And, I had a packed 6 weeks of baseball. So when I come back, I start looking at it, and like everybody that didn't do it basically held on to their roster and, did their normal contact recruiting through coaches. And I was like, ooh, man, I'm way behind. And a lot of guys took that summer off just to call coaches and find out about their recruiting lists and all that, who was going to show up. So I really felt like I was behind. So my goal was to make sure I had 8 high quality position guys and 8 high quality arms. And then I'll just go ahead and just start adding to it. And, it was, again, because there's so many guys and so many draft eligible guys, you're going to gamble. And I'm gambling on 5 or 6. I have no idea, what's going to happen come July 11th, and neither do they. So, kind of different a little bit, but I think I got caught up, but I narrowed my team. I nailed my team. I felt like I did that. So some of my extra pieces, the other 8 pitchers, that'll probably make a big difference on whether we win half our games or 2/3 of our games. They could be guys that are there until July 10th and then gone. So it's just going to be, I don't know, it's going to be more like being a manager, general manager. And my GM's good. Mike's he's not out there in the field, so he doesn't really, get a chance to eyeball the kids. And doing broadcasting that I've done, I've seen a lot of my players, and seen them play, and I've seen, ESPN Plus, and I have access to Synergy. So I've seen most of my guys, and I know what I'm getting. I just got to see who's going to show up.
You have your, typical recruiting spots. Of course, Oklahoma State pipeline has been noted in your time. Texas as well. You have history there. A lot of Texas players on the roster. Georgia Tech, a big haul this season for the Anglers, bringing in Pareda, DeLeo, Maxwell, and more. What about some of those Yellow Jackets guys excited you, and how did you build that relationship with Georgia Tech to get those players onto the Anglers?
Well, as is the case with most, oh boy, I don't know. I guess it might be like 15 years ago. I called Danny Hall and explained to him that my son was available and needed a coaching job. And I kind of, went out on a limb and said, hey, I know this is hard to, recommend your son, but I'm going to do it. And Danny was a friend. And at that time I said, hey, you're not going to get a better young coach than Josh Holliday. And a week later, he called me and said, I'm going to hire your kid. So he did. And so immediately after Josh coached at Georgia Tech, and, he did his little journey to the assistant coaching vine that gets you ready to be a head coach. Danny remained a friend. And then I actually had Danny's son 2 years ago up in the Cape. And Danny gives me good players. And yet, if he has other guys that I can't take, he'll put them in the league, and there's no hard feelings. And, we got Prada, a catcher that, can really hit, coming this summer. And we got a pitcher named Maxwell, who I had last summer, who throws 97 to 100. And, Maxie has some things to work on. And Danny knows that, and he knows that I know the kid. So he trusts me with what we're going to work on to get him a little bit more polished. And again, to make them better when they go back to school. And Prada can really hit. He can catch. His catching skills and throwing skills are probably, when they're developed, he'll be catching in the big leagues. I mean, he's that kind of prospect. So, it's kind of an honor that they send you guys like that. But I promise you this, the staff that I have up there, they're all in it for the right reasons. There's nobody up there to try to glorify their careers. They've all been way up the ladder, and they give my guys a lot of, I'm going to say, special knowledge of the game, because they made it all the way to the big leagues, and that's the special thing. And all my guys went to college, so they've been to college and they've been to the bigs. So I think that the coaches that I deal with that were friends of mine, I've known Kevin O'Sullivan for, gosh, I don't know, 20 years, back when he was a puppy, when he first started recruiting. And he and Josh are best of friends. And a lot of the recruiting blood comes from friendship. And, a lot of kids from this area of the country, the word's out that, there's a Cape connection in the Midwest. So, we're getting really good arms out of the Big 12, and the Big 12 is loaded with big arms. So your connections are still your best recruiters.
Ethan Long completely busting out at Arizona State, raking all season long. What did you see that allowed that level of success so quickly for him?
Well, it's kind of funny. Ethan was first recommended to us as a pitcher. And again, Tracy's a good friend. And he's like, you guys got to take this guy. He's special. Okay, done deal. Now, I get word that he's got like 4 home runs. And I was like, whoa. You guys got the wrong Long. And they go, no, he's really hitting the ball well. And I said, okay, how much pitching is he doing? And, when he came out, the word in the pro scouting world was 95, 96, got a chance to be a top level starter in the big leagues. Well, here I am getting a guy that I thought I was getting a pitcher. Instead, I'm getting a hitter. Well, then he goes into a pattern of hitting home runs that's being talked about all over the West Coast. Now I start monitoring him, and a couple of the guys that I know out there said, Coach, this guy's another Torkelson. And I'm okay, say no more, but I hope maybe if his arm's solid and if his parents want him to, or whoever's advising him, whether it's, it's Tracy or whoever, if he wants to pitch a little bit this summer, then, we'll let him do it. But I sure hope we're getting that guy. I hope he shows up on time, and I hope I have him all summer, because he sounds like a really exciting guy.
We are incredibly excited to see him. The Torkelson comparisons have already started internally with our media team, so it's good to hear that everyone is on that sort of wave in terms of comparing one ASU slugger to another ASU slugger, both lucky enough for us to be in Chatham in past summers and now future summers for long. I want to circle back a little bit. You mentioned the condensed schedule a few times. You know, same number of games, but squeezed into about 6 weeks. You know, obviously, pitchers, that presents a challenge of just fatigue. But what are some of the other things that are challenged by the fact that this is a condensed schedule compared to the usual Chatham or Cape Cod Baseball League season?
Well, I think the biggest challenge, the new challenge, the how you want to call it, the new player in the room is Major League Baseball. I mean, they have created what they're calling the Appalachian League. They're referring to a league called the Draft League. And you know, I really like this because there's an emphasis now that hasn't existed, and they're trying to push college players to go play in the summer. And even if you're not a starter, even if you're not a so-called stud, they've put leagues together so that everybody's playing summer baseball. Now, where the challenge is going to be is, are they truly going to work with the Cape guys? Because when this thing started, I talked to the commissioner, I talked to the USA guy, Eric Campbell, who is a friend, longtime friend, and a very, very, very good guy. And his explanation to me was that the new leagues were not going to be designed to compete with Cape Cod, but to just give kids a place to play. And if somebody got hurt, we could call that league and say, hey, I just had a catcher go down. I need a catcher. And that they would send you a catcher right away. And I said, wow, so we're actually going to be able to almost assume that we have a minor league relationship. And he said, yeah. And, you know, that's what we want, because we need to have the second level of 300 players playing in the Appalachian League. And I said, you know, that's really good. Now, can you get all the college guys to push all their kids? You know, unless you're going to summer school, get your butt out and play. And, you know, that league is full, which is good. And now the problem is, in the past, if I lost somebody, man, you got to call all over the place to try to get a replacement. And sometimes by the time you get it, you know, you get buried. And so, again, having that relationship, if it truly develops, if it truly exists, I think the Cape is going to be dynamite. Because I do know some guys up there would lose players, and then their talent level would drop towards the end, and then they would just fall off. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think everybody is going to stay good all year. If not, they're just not calling the right people. But I think that there's a strong emphasis on keeping Cape Cod the premium draft prep league for next year's draft. So I'm anxious to see if it works, you know, because Major League Baseball's put a lot of money in it. And when they spend money, they like to get results. So I'm anxious to see that. I think that'll be the most unique part of dealing this summer.
And Coach, before we get you out of here, we talk so much about the talent we're excited for this summer, but your former talent thriving as well. Alek Manoah pitched for you in 2018, now in the big leagues, couple starts in with the Toronto Blue Jays. Want to get your thoughts on what you saw and what you observed with Alek Manoah in 2018, both as a person and as a pitcher, that's allowed him to have this success.
Well, you know, that's a pretty cool story. And, you know, I've coached for, I don't know, I guess 42 years in college. And then the last 3 years since I left Auburn, you know, I've been kind of connected to the Cape and everything. And, you know, Alek Manoah was one of those guys. Well, you know, I recruited him to Auburn before I left there. And he actually was going to come there if I stayed there. And then he went to West Virginia. And just so happens the guys at West Virginia both work for my son. And I called and said, hey, guys, there's a guy on the table you might want to go get. Who's that? I said, Alec Manoa. And they're like, okay, tell me about him. So I did. And so they went after him and they got him. And here's a kid from Homestead, Florida, going to Morgantown, West Virginia. Well, that's a pretty big adjustment. So he goes, and then here he comes, at the next summer when I go to the Cape, I'm like, hey, guess what? Guess who you're going to play for? And he starts laughing. He goes, Coach, you're kidding me. And I said, no. So when he showed up, he picked me off the ground about 2 feet because he's a monster guy. And I'm not a little guy, but he picked me up off the ground, almost broke my ribs. And I just kind of like whispered in his ear. I said, well, now that I got you, what am I going to do with you? And he said, Coach, I haven't pitched more than an inning and 2/3 in 2 years. He said, I'm a closer. And I said, what do you want to do? What do you want to be in baseball? And he says, I want to be a starter. I said, okay, well, we got 8 weeks. I'll call Randy. I'll see what he thinks. And if it's what you want to do, then here's what you got to do. And, I was like, you're overweight to be a starter. You're going to have to condition more. You got to get hitting off your mind. You got to focus on your recovery time, and I'll take your pitch count up slowly and surely. And you know what? He was easy. He did everything that Dennis Cook and I told him. We added the third pitch. He ran, he jumped rope. He lost like 18 pounds. And honestly, we went from 2 innings to 3 innings to 4 innings to 5 innings. And then in the championship game, he starts it and we get fog in the 6th. And, he comes over to me and says, Coach, I'm finishing this game. And I said, well, if the fog lifts, you will. That's it. Well, the fog didn't lift, and it never lifted any time we were up there. So, he goes, tomorrow at noon, Coach, I'm finishing this game tomorrow. I said, no, you're not. He's like, yeah, I am. And I said, no, you're not. He goes, I'm a lot bigger. I said, yeah, I know you are. And, I told him, I said, you have a career, kid. You've set yourself up. You've proven to the baseball world that you can be a starting pitcher. You think I would try to win 1 game just because you want to win a ring? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I want a ring. I may never get one. I said, well, I'll give you one. I got about 30 of them in my closet that I don't really wear, and I'll send you one, but you're not pitching tomorrow. You're done. Your summer's over. Well, then he went back, and, Randy called and said, wow, he's a real deal, and team leader, and, telling guys they're going to Omaha. And, he just absorbed everything that we threw at him. And when he got to the big leagues, that was like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 times in my career I've had that same feeling, but it was really, really cool.
That's a great story, Coach, and appreciate so much time today. Really excited to get another Cape League season rolling, and best of luck as you prepare this next week. Appreciate the time.
Hey, thanks for having me on, buddy.
Awesome time catching up with Chatham manager Tom Holliday, back for another season leading the Anglers, and will lead his team out to the fields at Falmouth opening day, just about a week away. Ben, he mentioned the anticipation and the eagerness to get back, but also how the talent just continues to get better, and that's doubled this year, considering a lot of these players missed out on the opportunity to play a Cape League season a summer ago. Many of them didn't get drafted, and now they're all vying for that same opportunity to compete on the Cape.
For sure. The pandemic had a lot of long-lasting effects on collegiate baseball, which trickles right in to Cape Cod baseball and how rosters are formed. The fact that the draft went from 40 rounds to 5, as Coach Holliday, or the manager, Tom Holliday, explained, means those 6th, 7th, even, 10th, 15th round picks, they're coming back, they're playing again. So then they want to go to the Cape before they get drafted. Not to mention, they might take a spot from a freshman who now feels that he needs to get more playing time, and maybe he wasn't going to play in the Cape, but now he will. And all that comes together to essentially mean these could very well be the most talented Cape Cod rosters we've seen in a long time. I mean, that's pretty, almost objectively. I don't want to say because it's hard to measure talent, but it's near objectively true with college baseball because of the talent that came back, the guys allowed extra years, and what we saw at all sports at the collegiate level, especially baseball. So to watch that translate into the Cape Cod League, it'll be even for everyone, you'd assume, but a ton of fun for all of us watching it because there's going to be so many good players on the Cape.
You mentioned all those good players. Ben and I will be able to preview it in a little bit more depth in our coming episode previewing the season. We've been highlighting players here and there. Some of them have stayed on the roster. Some of them have dropped off the roster, and it'll come into more shape over the next week or so before the Anglers kick off their season at Falmouth. But rounding out the roster doesn't only include players that are going to take the field in Chatham. Ben and I are really excited about some of the talented media team staff we're going to be able to work with all summer, producing content on Anglers Social and beyond. We're happy to welcome Andrew Crane and Ali Kaler from Syracuse as our beat writers, Jake Klein from the Loomis Chaffee School as a media team assistant, and then our visual media team interns, Maggie Minoni from Virginia Tech, Michaela McMillan, back for another year from Framingham State University, and Will Fudge from Syracuse as well. Ben has his Syracuse orange. You heard the cues a lot during that announcement. Ben, it speaks to your school, but just really excited to work with all these talented individuals.
Yeah, I had to get a little Syracuse in there because we have a handful, but really excited. We've already posted the beat writers. By the time this episode goes up, we'll have all of our visual interns. Yes, we are a handful from the same school, but we all come from different walks. So I'm really excited. I wasn't best friends with all these people before we came. Now I get to meet a lot of new people. And as we've already seen, whether it's the video that just got put out, some of the graphics that have gone up, the stories that we've put out, there's so much talent, not just on this baseball team, but on this media team too, with the people that we're working with are really, really good at their jobs. They make our jobs easier, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So, if you're interested in who's going to be taking your photos, who's going to be taking the videos, where to find the writing, and who's going to be writing the stories, all that information is now going to be available. Twitter, Facebook, our website, Instagram, everything. The media team, if it's not public by now, something went wrong. So it should be public by the time you've listened to this episode. And it's going to be a great experience to work with all of them.
Absolutely. And be sure to follow at Chatham Anglers across all social media platforms if you want to see some of that great work, and just follow the Anglers all season long, because that's our job, to bring the team's stories to life all summer. So great chatting with Tom Holliday, great previewing what's ahead a little bit this episode. We'll have more of an in-depth preview on the roster in episodes to come. This has been episode 6 of The Hook. For Ben Schulman, Emmanuel Berbere. We'll catch you next time.